maintenance people like to be hands-on. They don't really like to be sitting in the classroom. They want to be learning it, and then once they learn it, they want to go do it right away. Teach them how to do something. Say it's a CPO, right? Something as simple as like a pool license. They get it in the wintertime, but then there's nowhere they can go. They can go do it. They got to wait 3 or 4 months to do it.
You're telling me what happens if we train them and they leave? He goes, my concern is, what if we don't train them and they stay?
It takes 400 repetitions of something in order to retrain the synapses in your brain in order to make it second nature. If you add play, whatever your version of play is, it takes 10 to 20 repetitions to change the brain's synapses.
How do you train that? So what do you want to train? And then what does that look like? And then if you need the funding to train it from the ownership or the executive management, do you have the time to show them what the ROI is? Because it can be measured, but
So, all right, and we are live. Welcome back, and welcome, Chris. Chris, I want to start with you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background.
sure. Well, obviously, I know Darren. I worked with Darren for quite a few years, actually, at Dominium. So good to see his face, and thanks for having me. I'm kind of excited about the opportunities that joining this group may bring. And I'm intrigued by the conversation you guys were having last time with the education and the training. That kind of hits me in a soft spot. So I'm excited to maybe dig a little deeper into that. Currently, I'm National Director of Building Services for Amley Residential. We're a multifamily developer and owner, and we're backed by Morgan Stanley, so we're public. We've got 25,000 units spread across 8 different cities, and if I remember, it's Atlanta, Austin, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Seattle, South Florida, and Southern California. And Adrian, you might know this. I mean, you're from Atlanta, I believe, if I read that right. But
Yes.
our 2 most recent lease ups were Amley Atlantic Station, 390 units there, and Amley Brookhaven, 630 units. And it's not quite finished yet. They're still working on it, but we're doing the lease up. So more about me is I love all things maintenance, but my major focus is MEP, heavy on the mechanical stuff, efficiency, preventative maintenance. And at Amley, I handled that with the existing properties, and I'm also have an active role in the new development side and the design review. So that's something that I always wanted, because it really, as maintenance people, sometimes it's tough for us to get the seat at that, development table and that during that construction process. So it's a great place for me to bring the property management concerns over to the construction side. I think the big elephant in the room right now for us on the development side is the A2L stuff. I don't know if you guys have been running into any of the A2L refrigerant issues, but on our construction side, that's hit us pretty good with the ventilation shafts and what have you. So luckily we have a VP here that's got years and years of real life HVAC experience, and he's pretty well versed in that, or trying to get versed in it. I guess I have an extensive background in complex systems, fire panels, elevators, life safety stuff, geothermal, and I think probably I ran maybe quite possibly the only hydroelectric plant that's based in the basement of an apartment complex in Minneapolis. So I was in charge of that and all the compliance there. So it's a little bit about myself.
What was the name of that place in Minneapolis?
That's it. That's A-Mill, and that's Dominium owns that.
Peter might be familiar with it. Aren't you?
I've driven past it. Yep.
Yep.
My
lots of
boss was
compliance.
telling me about that. My boss is Jim Mitchell, and he was
Know Jim very well.
Big
Yep.
Jim's your boss.
I worked for Jim.
man.
I worked for Jim. So,
Oh wow! All right, yeah. So I never got to work for Jim Mitchell, but I met him several times, and I closed the bar with him over at the National Apartment Association one year. Really got to know that guy. He's a great guy. Yeah, you got a winner there. And
I do.
He's a good leader.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, once again, everybody knows everybody, so I'm loving this. Dave D.
Thank you.
Welcome to the team, sir. Your first time here, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate the invitation.
Of course. So why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
Oh man, I got a long. I'm an old timer now in this industry, but
Gi-
yeah,
Give
I'm
us,
current.
give us the short version.
Yeah,
25 years.
short version. Started out with Johnson Controls in the automation field, programming and doing performance contracting. Then jumped over to the mechanical contracting side with McCarles in Pittsburgh. Went on to executive management, reorganized Huckestein, Curlin Mechanical in DC's when I came here, and then Crockett Facility Services. Then from there, I took a year off, thought I was going to hang up the shoes, and I got an some of my former employees had convinced me to come to the National Association of Power Engineers Educational Foundation. Been here for about 3 years, and it's a great organization that basically provides training for the building engineering professionals in the DC area. And we are hopefully, from a national perspective, going to start some national training maybe by the end of this year.
This is quite amazing. I'm so glad you're here because that's what we're talking about, training and education.
Right.
What are a few ways in which you could see working with our industry, with a multifamily facilities industry?
I would say that the split was 85-15 of commercial facility management versus multifamily in the past. We're seeing a big gain. I bet you now 20%, 25% are multifamily. And what we're seeing is that, first of all, the pay differences are really shrinking between the commercial and the multi housing. And by those employers having an employee that's much more apt to perform self-perform a lot of things that they typically would subcontract out, they are starting to really provide a lot of their own repairs, their own installations, and they're providing training for their employees as a way to retain their services. But got to tell you that there's some really impressive gentlemen and some ladies, by the way, on the multi-housing side. We're seeing that growing.
I love to hear that. That's actually a very positive um, feedback out there that you're seeing it. So it's great to have you on. I love
Sure.
get you involved in a conversation here. I like to start
Appreciate that.
with best practices for training implementation, like effective hands-on training methods beyond e-learning. I want to start with you, Chris. Maybe there's a few things that you would like to share with us about best practices when it comes to maintenance training.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know if there's best practices per se. I've always kind of had a hard time getting the employer, getting the executive leadership to buy in that the training is worth the ROI, right? So I've always kind of had to do it myself and move along. And what I used to do when I worked for Dominium is we'd do training. I traveled a lot, so I'd go to say to St. Louis, and we'd pull the 7 guys together, and I'd say, well, what's a work order that you've had out there that you would normally call a mechanical contractor for, let's say.
That's right.
And we go through a couple of those, and then I'd get all the guys over and we would do that work, whether it was a pump replacement or what have you. It's hands-on, it's right there, it's in the room. And it just seemed to work really good because they're just not getting bored. Maintenance people like to be hands-on. They don't really like to be sitting in a classroom. They want to be learning it, and then once they learn it, they want to go do it right away. So that's the other thing I've seen is where you teach them how to do something. Say it's a CPO, right? Something as simple as like a pool license. They get it in the wintertime, but then there's nowhere they can go. They can go do it. They got to wait 3 or 4 months to do it. So I think one thing would be is once we train to get the people active doing what they learned right away, using those skills. I think that'd be one good thing. So they don't lose it and they don't get bored with it. And then I also think that training should be, on a set schedule, if you will. I'm not saying like the 5th of every month or whatever, but I think it helps know that the people know there's more training coming, because I feel like they feel forgotten about. They get hired. A lot of times they don't even get to do their onboarding fully. It's like they show up the first day. It's like, oh, can you go do this? Can you go do that? And sometimes their onboarding doesn't even get completed for 3 months. So I think when it comes to training, that's, it goes back to retention. And I think as long as they know more training's coming and we're true to our word, that's kind of falls into that best practice as far as the implementation part of it.
Yeah, I think we probably all here on this call agree. And if we were to bring like 50 others just like us, will agree that the hands-on is the most effective. I learned most of my stuff hands-on, honestly. It's been probably like, 80% hands-on, 20% other ways to learn, like, class environment, so on and so forth. I think right here the challenge is that how do we scale that experience? Because Chris, there's only one of you, and I bet that Emily doesn't have like 30 Chris's that go all over the country, and it's so much that you could do, that you could cover. It's only 8 hours, 10 hours in a day, 5 days a week. Like it's impossible for you to touch every single employee, and then even if you get to touch all of them, it's gonna take you too long. By the time you get to start over again. So to me, I would love to hear, anybody here on a group that would like to share how do we complement that with, with other things, and how do we scale this in-person experience? Because obviously, we don't have enough trainers, we don't have enough individuals that are qualified to do the in-person training. And Derek, I see that your hand is up, so please, sir, go right ahead.
I think that's why we have to, rely on some of the modules that we have in place. And like interplay learning, we use that at Simpson, and it's been a great tool for them to kind of meet in the middle between classroom and actually hands-on. Not really hands-on, but at least you're able to go through the steps and virtually make the repair or test the components of a microwave, whatever it may be. But you're exactly right. Most of us learn by doing. And there are so few guys out there to go around when you're spread out around the country. It's almost impossible to get to everybody and give everybody the equal amount of attention.
I like to have yeah. So sorry.
I got
Go
2 cents
go
here.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think definitely it's an all above the board approach. You can't get everywhere, you can't be everywhere. I think identifying other key leaders in the company that can help you with training. Maybe you have an advanced maintenance supervisor that you empower to help train other people. Maybe you promote that guy. At Dominion, we created this new position called it's right under me. I'm a regional maintenance manager. So this position is called a regional maintenance specialist. So it's a smaller footprint, but they're tasked to do a lot of the same things that I do, but with a smaller footprint. So that's another layer. And then one thing I always say is to all the guys and gals, don't sit around and wait for me for training. You need to be empowered yourself to learn as much as you want to. Especially, everybody's got one of these.
Mm-hmm.
You got the power of the world in your hands, dude. If
Yep.
you want to know about the latest Schindler elevator and the features, you jump on their website, man. They got all kinds of training videos. So it's the combination of all 3 of those. Getting around when you can, empowering, finding other key leaders in your company that you can empower to help with the training, and then also just, hey, it's on you as well. You got to go out there and get that information. You want to rise up to the top. You want more money. You want more responsibility. You got to go get it.
Amen.
Thank you, sir. Amen. Like you said, Roy, do you have any thoughts on best practices for training implementation? We'll come back to you. I see that you're probably not available. Mark Sharp. Any thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think so far everything that was said from Chris and Darren. I mean, I can't agree more. But Darren, to your point, it's up to the individual. If you sit around and wait for somebody to do something for you, that's I don't want to say it's never going to happen, but it's not a priority for that other person. And we as maintenance individuals need to take control of the narrative. And if education is important, no, I get it. I understand. Not it's words are words, right? Everyone can say words, but putting them into action is the hard part. So I think that we have a situation where we are expecting our companies and we're expecting other people to do for us. And there aren't many educators, there aren't many trainers, and there are only one of us within our companies. And well, we can't be everywhere, but that's where I think we need to rely a lot on. And I'm a fan of this, and you've heard me say it 1,000 times if you've been on this call, but I'm a fan of the local apartment association. So if we need training, if maintenance needs training, if there's a situation in your part of the country, whether you're working on hydro systems or whether you're boiler, whether you're heat pump, whether you're whatever, whatever's plaguing the industry, ask the association to bring in an expert so that way you can cover a lot of people and get those things discussed. But we need to stop waiting for people to come up with it. It's up to us. That's why we're in this leadership council. So we have these ideas. Let's take them out and let's make it happen. Let's make maintenance training a focal point instead of a pain point.
Yeah, you kind of made a point for me because I was about to say chances are people that are like you describe, go get it, are already in this room or part of this council, most of them. Right, that
Yeah.
you will find in the industry. They show initiative. They've done something like they didn't wait for somebody to give them anything, right?
Yep.
To come to them. For me, this is a percentage point of all the maintenance personnel in the industry. What do we do for the others that are not necessary go-getters, but they might want to learn if you bring it to them? So for me, that's kind of like the big question. How do you get it close to them? You make it very easy for them to access, and then how do you scale that? How do you do that at scale so it touches everybody beyond just the LMSs, the learning platforms? I think I'd love to hear some thoughts. Peter, any thoughts?
I would mostly echo, I think, what Darren was saying, that I think it's the different layers of authority. He said he has another layer beneath him that he empowers them to do a lot of training. I would say that we are trying to develop that as best as we can as well, so that there's a select group of like 8% of our guys that are on a select group that are kind of made well known in our company, and they're provided as a resource. Because one thing I've noticed in this last year is that, maybe similar to what you were saying, Adrian, is that like between one and two of us, we might not know the answer, but collectively, if you gather information from the room or ask the question up to the room, somebody knows the answer. And that's the same within your company too, but most people, we have one of our core values is one team, but if people don't believe that, if they just think it's their region or whatever, but no, we're okay with having somebody from Minneapolis go talk to somebody from Denver because they might know how to solve the problem, but they oftentimes don't feel comfortable reaching out, even though they're all more than welcome to. So I think that's how you probably can bring it more available. But once again, that does involve somebody actually reaching out and raising their hand for a question too. So
it feels like a peer coaching system, right? Am I saying this the right way? Am I getting this the right way?
yeah.
Sure. A
Yep.
peer coaching system. How many of those individuals you have within your company?
13.
And then how many units totally, or how many properties totally you have under management? Your company does.
I should say we have there's 12 of those guys. We have 13,000 units.
So
So it's about 1 per 1,000. Yeah. But it's not really like there's some regions that aren't represented necessarily because it's a select group of people. So
I understand. To me, the 1 per 1,000 units is pretty reasonable, because that means that one person is kind of like overseeing about 10 site level, or like provides assistance for 10 site level personnel. I mean, to me, that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about other thoughts around the table here. Roy, any thoughts on best practices for training implementation?
I've been with a few companies with the training. They actually had a training program with Essex, where there was one main guy out of Seattle that trained, right? And then he came to each, I would say, like district, like LA, and we would test, and there was a couple people that were really good. So what they did was they trained the trainer, is what they called it. And that one person would be for that area, would be the trainer. He would give the plumbing classes. And it's a 2-day plumbing class, or the 2-day HVAC class, or 2-day. And that was kind of his responsibility, other than his property, is to schedule training for new people coming in. I was a trainer for Essex, and it worked out pretty good. We would select, as we got employees coming in, once we got a big group together, and no more than 20 to limit the space. We also had a site in Van Nuys that had all the equipment. They had the practice electrical boards, hands-on practice. So you did your book work the first day. The second day, you put it all hands-on. So everybody got comfortable with the torches when it came to with the plumbing, right? And that's what it came down to, is that second day was the best day because everybody got comfortable actually putting it into practice. But it's kind of hard just to start that program out. You first have to find somebody that has the ability to teach a mass group of people, and then kind of keep all that tracked as well. So I'd say that would be probably the best training program that I've been a part of, other than the stuff that's online with Interplay that we use now, which is always readily available at any time and any moment. And with the hands-on training, it's when somebody has time, because a lot of us, we run our own properties, right? It's about the time, having that time to allow us to get with everybody and get everybody together and do the training.
Roy, at peak, how many people would you say that were trained at your training facilities with Essex?
I would say maybe we had 20 per class at max, and we did about a class each quarter. So I would say close to 100 for electrical, and then close to 100 again for plumbing, and then the same thing with the HVAC. The classes filled up fast. Faster than we had time to pretty much we didn't have the time. I once a quarter was about all the time I had for about a week. And then, I had other sites that I had to run as well. So it was about, scheduling the classes quarterly. Like I said, it was very difficult as far as time goes. But then again, it saved us a lot of money as far as contracting certain things out. We didn't have to contract our electrical out. We didn't have to contract our plumbing out. HVAC, you'll still run into problems where you will have to contract it out.
Imagine if you had an opportunity to do that 52 times a year. How many people? Close to 20.
You might actually run out. Yeah, you might actually run out of people to train.
Well, you get them
Which
back.
is the hope.
You do a refresher, but it's over 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Train every week, 20 people. That's you could scale at an impressive number. Yeah. James, if you're in a position to turn the camera on, or if you wanna just share some thoughts while you're with us here you are. Welcome back. Long time no see.
Hey, Adrian. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, you know how it is we commit to these things and then priorities come up, but I'm glad to hear everybody's input. Yeah, I think going around the room, everybody has said it's got to be holistic. You have to take, personal accountability of your own training and then seek out exterior opportunities. So whether that's your local association, like Mark was saying, I work very closely with the Washington Multifamily Housing Association on their training and development, CAMT scholarships and all that type of stuff. So we have those opportunities. Working with your national suppliers. So HD Supply gives us a coursework that we upload into our Avenue U interface, which has webinars and training that you can do all the time. We have a national training calendar through our career development specialists. We bring HD Supply or Ferguson in on lunch and learns. We do local lunch and learns with HVAC companies or electrical companies, anybody who wants to throw money at us to get in front of our team so that they can build their brand. I'm like, you guys want to bring us lunch and teach us how to do stuff? That's another way. And then for the portfolio I get to work with, we do monthly maintenance supervisor meetings. We do those quarterly in person where we go over current trends, seasonal changes, things coming up with new software platforms or cyclical issues, whatever that looks like in the area. And then I've been pushing the teams in my portfolio to create like regional pods. So say you got 7 buildings within a mile radius, there's 2,000 units or something like that. You got 7 supervisors that can get lunch every week and then help fill gaps for each other, cross-train maintenance techs or assistant supervisors to come over and learn different experiences with different aged buildings or different systems, whether you got boilers or RCCs or HVAC or whatever that looks like. So yeah, I mean, overall, it comes down to the responsibility of the individual, but as long as we keep brainstorming and leaning on each other to help build those people up, that's the way that we continue to create more worth in our positions.
Or the pod seems to be working well for you?
Specifically one pod. So in Queen Anne, Belltown area of downtown Seattle. So I oversee downtown Seattle. There's 38 properties in my portfolio, so about 7,000 units. And that's from SeaTac to Shoreline. So it's about a 10-mile stretch of I-5 here. Specifically for Queen Anne, there's about 7 buildings and then 3 buildings in Belltown, which is less than a mile away, where they have all come together to help train each other, whether that's, jumping in to do SDS audits or lighting audits or helping with preventative maintenance programs or, hey, I can't figure out this issue with this light or something like that. The supervisors will help. We had a supervisor go out recently in that 7-person pod that he was out for a week and the team came in, created a schedule for service requests and turns, doing the trash and taking the on-call without even reaching out to me. So empowering the teammates to have leadership amongst themselves has really been beneficial, and it helps really create hope for them where potentially, maintenance supervisor is kind of like the top role typically, but it gives them a feeling of like a higher status, and then it helps us create worth within them around. Another thing that Avenue 5 does is we have a Phone-a-Fiver program, which would be like your peer-to-peer mentor program, and that is pushed out on a national scale from career development, but they're localized to areas. So we have multiple people who are specialized in those things, whether that's property managers or maintenance supervisors or regionals or anything like that. And everybody has my phone. It's on all the time. We all get those 3 a.m. calls about this fire happened, who do I call type stuff. So, I mean, the hard part is, like you said, we got 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. how do we create the impact that we want? And I think, the quarterly in person for the full group for me is a big one. The monthly open discussion that we have. I run the monthly maintenance supervisor meetings virtually, but more like a men's group almost, or like a person's group, if you will, where I make everybody talk about their recent issue on site, and then that creates open conversation between teammates who might have similar experiences, and then we can all learn from the same experience. So potentially next time they come into that type of situation, they have an answer already. So that's a long-winded way to say it's gotta be everybody trying to do their best.
Thank you. Dave, any thoughts on best practices for training implementation that you
Yeah.
could share with the group?
Sure. Go back, I'll expand when Chris started this conversation. One of the things is that the time and money that's required to invest into a particular employee. That's just like incredibly the most important item for executive management to really make that decision for that investment. But, he also brings up a point which I use when I meet with different companies. If they can actually take a call and provide the repair themselves instead of calling out a mechanical contractor, typically takes one call a year to pay for one training class. Our training classes are $1,700 and down. Believe it or not, they're making money sending somebody to training if they can fix one item every year. So it becomes a no-brainer when they look at that type of return on investment. And the second item that I will bring up, a lot of the property management contracts have the ownership of the facility have a training budget, and they actually pay, not the management company, but the owners of the facility pay for training of the employees that work there. So maybe that's something that some of you can look into to see which of your facilities have the ability to get people trained and not have it come out of your budget. Moving on past the payment program, listening to all the lunch and learns, and I like the idea of splitting up the teams and everybody talking about one situation so they all can learn. Those are awesome. All you're doing is investing time. But on other classes that can be up to 60 hours long, we typically hold them in 3-hour increments once a week at night over a course of a 20-week period. The one issue that we have had with some of the employees at the companies is the people that are the go-getters and that are successful. You know what? You're paying for their class. They're there. There's others that want paid to attend a class that they want you to pay for too. So that's sometimes got to be a call that management makes. He could be a great employee, but he just doesn't believe that he thinks his time should be paid for to get knowledge that's going to help him do his job better. So could be one of those dilemmas. But going back up to management, as an executive, I always like this one cartoon. The CFO was in a meeting with the CEO, and he really expressed his concern of spending company money training employees that could potentially leave. And then the CEO says, "Well, what happens? You're telling me what happens if we train them and they leave?" He goes, "My concern is what if we don't train them and they stay?" Think about the way technology changes. Training isn't an option anymore. It's not even an option. So you gotta, first of all, get the buy-in from management. But I love the ideas you are all coming up with of different ways to provide different type of training. Our hands-on training is basically a combination of classroom training and lab work. So we have labs for our different as part of our original curriculums. But why the hands-on is so important? A lot of people can learn out of a book. Some people not so much. I have a learning disability. In college, if I wasn't paying attention in class, or if I was in a class of 700 people in the study hall that you couldn't ask questions, I didn't do so well. But if I was allowed to participate, I did very well. Well, that's what the labs are so important with the hands-on training, because some people are book smart, but you get them into a panel and you're teaching them what these different parts and pieces do. It's amazing. And they retain it. They're able to bring it back to their facilities and perform that work. Plus, if they're taken off the panels, if you're teaching them about the safety, if you're showing them how to troubleshoot, they don't get that shock treatment that if it's just classroom training and they've never taken the panel off or they've never touched something, they're very apprehensive when they get back to their facilities. But one of the most successful ways that our students continue to grow is when they're earlier in their careers, they're being part of a two-person team on some of these troubleshooting and maintenance items. And they typically put the junior worker, we'll call, with more of a journeyman worker. And, they make sure that they have X hours per week that they're working with an experienced journeyman who actually mentors them in not only providing the tasks, but also learning the building. So the most worrisome part of our older employees retiring isn't necessarily just their skills in maintaining a facility, it's knowing the nuances of that facility. So it becomes important to transfer that knowledge from people that are going to be retiring to the younger employees that will be staying.
Mark Sharp, your hand is up. You're next, sir.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on something Dave just said. Most of you know Paul Rhodes. He's a good friend of mine. He's been a trainer. He wrote CAMT. Like, he's extremely knowledgeable. He just went to a training seminar a few weeks ago, and we were having a conversation this past weekend. And he filled me in on this statistic, which I thought you all might find interesting, but more importantly, it's relevant to what Dave was just saying. So it takes there's a different statistic when it comes to forming a habit, but it takes 400 repetitions of something in order to retrain the synapses in your brain, in order to make it second nature. If you add play, whatever your version of play is, if you add play, it takes 10 to 20 repetitions to change the brain's synapses.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So we're talking about being book smart. We're talking about sitting down in a thing and you're not touching anything. But if play to you is hands, if play to you is grabbing the screwdriver and changing the outlet, or grabbing the screwdriver and taking this and doing that, and if that is play to you, we learn much faster if we're doing things in our form of play, whatever play is. And I've heard some of you mention Interplay as a learning platform, and I personally have never used it, but I've seen some of their videos and I've seen some of the stuff, and I can understand how people love and use Interplay, because the VR, the hands-on, even though it's virtual, you're still touching leads, you're still like picking up the tool to turn something, and that could be considered play. So while yes, training is important, the type of training is also equally important based on the person you're trying to reach.
Yeah, never used the Interplay myself, but it's been brought up. It comes up in a conversation at least like once a month, if not on almost every single meeting. We also have a statement from one of our members that oversees a large portfolio, like I think 40,000 apartment homes. The adoption rate for the people, for the trainees, were like incredibly low, incredibly low. He only had like 2-3% of the entire company that actually took that training and used the interplay tool. So in my mind is maybe I'm thinking in this group right here we see the value in that, and maybe for us this could be something that's great. But then you also have to make it like to where people at the site level will enjoy using it. Because if not, you could end up with a situation like the gentleman described a couple of months ago, to where the adoption rates are like close to zero, really. So you're paying for something that a VP or a director thinks it's a great tool, and it could be for them. But when it comes to putting in the hands of people at the site level, it turns out to be like a resounding failure. And I'm not saying this to criticize the product. I never had to use it. I've been given like a demo for like 6-7 years ago, and I'm sure that they made a lot of changes since. So I don't have like firsthand knowledge, but then I think it's important that we bring in a conversation both sides of the coin, right? Because you had to make it to where it's not just like something that looks great, right, from outside looking in, or even for you, like maybe you being the end user, but you had to think like who are most of the end users, and those are the technicians and the supervisors at the site level. And you had to put something in their hands that actually works for them, right? Peter, you're up next, sir. Your hands is up.
Just commenting off Interplay, we also have Interplay. We rolled it out last year with VR. With that rollout, I visited every site and kind of like showed them how to use the VR and Interplay. Everybody thought it was a super cool tool. Nobody uses the VR headset, but they still use the Interplay on the desktop because it's more convenient and faster, and speed is more of a priority than like using the VR tool. So I think and our adoption rate has been like 70% monthly completion when we send something out, which is not too bad. We'd like it to be better, but basically what we found out is that nobody uses the VR, but it was probably worth it from a factor of getting people hyped about a new training platform.
I appreciate this feedback, obviously, from coming from a user, from a company that's using it. Chris, you're up next, sir. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to, when we're talking about training, right? We kind of need to talk about what do we want to train first off, right? Because that's going to be different scenarios all around, and how do you train that? So what do you want to train, and then what does that look like? And then if you need the funding to train it from the ownership or the executive management, do you have the time to show them what the ROI is? Because it can be measured, but it could take a year, 2 years, 3 years of data to prove that training is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing.
And I think that's not that's not a stretch. It takes that long to see the difference, right? So you have enough data points. And what do you do with people that only stick around for 3 to 6 months? Side level, probably industry wide, we have like somewhere in a 70% range of employee turnover. Whether some companies are doing better than others, or whether people are willing to admit, I know that the real numbers are right there, probably in a 70% range. Again, with exceptions. So when you have that high of a turnover, how do you gain enough data points to actually show the meaningfulness of a program or a training program? Because you don't get most of the people to stick with a company long enough to collect those data points. I would like in a time that we have remain, I think that we still haven't even like scratched the surface. There's other like main education related topics that I don't want to like brush off. I would like for us to attack in a next conversation, but probably like not 2 weeks. I'd like to maybe take a break from like training and education and try different topics that are of interest to our members. So I like to go around the table, and Chris, actually, I'm gonna get back at you with what are some topics that you would be passionate about, you will like for us to talk about during these meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be interested to see how everyone's handling contracts. I'm at the corporate level, obviously, so I'm interested in maybe which contracts are you guys managing at a site level or a local level versus having the corporate team manage those. How are you keeping the ones that you manage at a corporate level, keeping the local site from, oh, I don't like that vendor, so I'm going to get a new vendor, and all of a sudden, 6 months down the road, you're looking at a contract. They're like, well, you guys kicked us out of that building 6 months, that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of interested in just some discussion on that because right now that's kind of something I'm working on in real life. So
It's something that I'm passionate about, and maybe you and I talk offline more about this until the next time. And I like to ask
sure.
you also, do you have an interest in talking about procurement in general?
I'm sorry, say it again. You cut out.
Do you have an interest in like talking about procurement like strategies? How do we strategize? Like how do we buy? How do we buy the day-to-day stuff? Not like things that are like snow removal or other contracts or waste management, but something that there's a contract obviously that gives us certain discounts, but how do we buy the MRO stuff, the day-to-day procurement?
Yeah, I would be interested in talking. I'd be interested in talking about that. At Amway, that's not part of my role. We actually have a whole department that just handles that. But it's still of interest to me, right? It still impacts me in my role, so I'm interested in it.
Yeah, this could be a great like solid conversation topic for an entire meeting. Peter, you're up next. uh Top of mind topics for next meetings.
Um, I'd be interested in, I think I'm most interested in what other companies are doing for KPIs and scorecards for individuals, particularly the service team. I'm looking at developing one for ours, but I think everybody wants to be measured and they want to know how they're measured in general. So I'm always interested in hearing what other people have.
There's technology out there that you don't have to build anything. It's already built for you. You just have
Yes,
you just
we
have
just
to.
have to know which ones to use because we have metrics on everything. We use core, but which ones are the most impactful? Which one? How do you measure a service team member's success based on what metrics?
Yeah, that's also an amazing topic of conversation. I'll make a note to have something dedicated to KPIs because both topics like the contracts, uh, procurement, and also KPIs are I'm deeply passionate about. Mark Sharp, uh, next top of mind conversation topics for next meetings.
Oh yeah, I would to echo Peter. I think KPIs would be a great one with the buzzwords of centralization floating around our industry. Like, what exactly does that mean? Of course, there's phenomenal data. There's phenomenal companies out there that offer data centralization and work order centralization, but what are the KPIs that you're going to put in place to measure whether or not that's successful? But then there's also the term centralization out there to reduce staff, to make things more efficient. Why have 20 maintenance personnel when I can centralize? Sounds, Jay or James, sorry. You were talking about Seattle, how you have some properties so close together. It may make sense to reduce staff, save overhead, cut maintenance. And so I think really kind of diving into not to get on centralization. I definitely do not want to talk about centralization, but KPIs, I think Peter kind of hit it for me right there because we really need to be defining what it is that makes a maintenance technician successful. I think, to use your words, like how do you define success and what KPIs are the individual companies looking at to determine that? Because I think once we figure those out, then maintenance centralization becomes a little bit more clear. But I think there's when people are talking about those things, I think there's just the what I think of centralization isn't the same thing that Chris thinks, isn't the same thing that Darren thinks, isn't the same thing that Jay thinks. So really getting the specific KPIs, I think would be crucial for what we're trying to do.
Not amazing topic. Dave, any thoughts for topics for next conversations?
I'm here to learn everything about the multifamily facilities industry. Again, I've come from commercial, government, mechanical contracting. A lot of similarities, but also differences. So I like the KPIs. I've developed them and used them in the past for my former companies, whether it be a mechanical contractor or the facilities gentleman, uh, based upon square foot, based upon how long it took to fix a call, how many complaints. There's similar but different. So I'm really excited to hear what you all have to share about that, because a KPI is useless unless it can be measured accurately and you can learn by it and drive efficiency with it.
We'll love to hear your thoughts coming with like a different angle, right? With like sister industries coming, and I'm sure that we have a lot to learn from you. So we look forward to hear your contributions. Roy, any top of mind topics for next meetings?
Well, one of my favorite things to talk about is preventative maintenance. I think it's the most, like, one of the most important things that we have. It kind of like prevents major items from happening. And if we get it on a good schedule and we have a good program, I think we can come together, and I think we can develop a good system, because preventative maintenance is, to me, like one of my most important part of my jobs.
Super solid topic. Thank you, James. Top of mind topics for next meetings.
I think it rolls into the rest of these, but targeted recruiting for the future of the industry, and who we can pass the baton to, because centralization and preventative maintenance and all these things are great, but if we don't have people with the hands to do it on site, then we're going to be losing money with temp agencies and things like that. Specifically, I've spoke to people before, the next generation is very computer savvy, potentially can't type, but they're great with their keyboards on their phones and things like that. And a lot of the new tech is, they're at thumb emails, which is wonderful. And a lot of the new tech is geared towards that. But, seeing younger cats come in and be like, oh yeah, I can use these programs, but can you do the fixes? And how do we find the pipeline for the people who can do the work, and then also potentially help, manage up to the teammates with the institutional knowledge on how they can effectively use those new systems to create those KPIs so that we can see cost savings.
Love it. We're approaching the top of the hour, but we still have Darren. So Darren, any thoughts, any top of mind topics for future conversations?
Yes, absolutely. I'd really like to hear, especially those thoughts on KPI. That's a great subject. For me, I'd love to hear more, and I think we talked about it on previous, but I think we need to, keep going. Is just how technology and AI can help us. I've been kind of playing around with AI. I had Copilot for a while. Now I'm using Chat GPT. I haven't done a manual corrective action form in months. All right. I take that document, man, I load it in Chat GPT and it breaks it down for me. I have to look at it for accuracy, add a few tweaks, but something that took me an hour, I can do it in like 10 minutes. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful subject to kind of go over. How we as maintenance professionals can use technology, to help us. Anything, from AI to work order triaging, that kind of stuff. Because that's the way of the future, man. Technology is going to help us be more efficient.
Couldn't think of a better way to close it, Darren. I think I want to do one that's like AI related to facilities management, not necessarily to training, but how do we use AI? Are people using AI? I think everybody in the world is like using it to, to some degree now. I think, and maybe we make that the topic of the next conversation 2 weeks from
Yeah,
now.
thank you. I
I'm
give you guys a perfect example, Adrian. A fire inspection report, right? It's in a form. It's usually a PDF. It's all boxed up. It's super nice. It's, pretty concise. You drop that thing in the chat GPT and it'll spit out, all your corrective actions. All you got to do is check it for accuracy and boom, you look like a super pro.
thank you for the tip. I'm using it for similar functions too. And there's a lot more that I'm not using it for. So I'd like to hear from you all. In closing, as we wrap up, thank you all, gentlemen. Another amazing conversation. I would love to, get you back here possibly 2 weeks from now. Definitely, the topic I think is gonna be AI. All of your topics are important. Don't feel like you've been left out. But every single one of you, brought up some amazing topics. It's just about how am I gonna, like in which order we're gonna take them. But I think AI is like a very relevant for the age we're living in. Also, I wanted to say for all the topics that you brought up during the conversation, feel free to reach out to me. I'd like to do like a separate podcast to talk about with you and maybe like a vendor that provides services that, help with that, to have a conversation about how we do certain things. It could be contracts, it could be anything. With this being said, I want to thank you all again. We got, since we recorded, this is gonna be up in a few days. We just published the one from 2 weeks ago. So if you check out our Multifamily X podcast channel, you will find the conversation from 2 weeks ago on our YouTube channel. And this one should be up like sometimes next week. Take care. Have an amazing afternoon.
Excellent.
See you.
Thank you all. Very great program. Appreciate inviting me.
Oh,
Thank you all.